It's not until you become a more experienced, seasoned boxer that you get the proper relaxation and whip-like force in your punches that go all the way, the kinetic chain that goes from your foot all the way to your knuckle to actually do damage in a boxing match. Here is a list of analogies that will help you better understand what I just said, but none of these will work unless you implement the strategy at the end of the video. Obviously, we need to increase retention time because we're all broke and we need ad revenue from YouTube. The first analogy is thinking of your jab as a piston. Now, a piston only works because of the combustion in the engine and how it moves in a certain way, which pushes the piston out. It's the same way your body creates force and generates a piston-like motion for your jab to come out faster and faster. It does this by using your shoulder as a sort of whip. So what you'll do is instead of bringing your hand back before you jab, like most people do, and they telegraph it and then throw, instead just think about whipping your shoulder back and then pushing with your shoulder your hand out, and your arm needs to be fully relaxed to do this. So you use your shoulder to push. It's kind of like a wave motion. You see the energy goes from my shoulder, then it goes into my elbow, and then out into my knuckle. See, shoulder moves first, and then the arm follows. The same motion like we taught in the how to jab video, all we're doing is we're just turning our hand over like this. That's all we're doing, but we set it off with this kinetic chain piston of our shoulder. The next analogy is the tea towel. Now, I don't know whether you used to play the same game with your siblings when you were younger, or in actual fact, I still do it. But you get a tea towel, you wrap it up like this, and then you like crack it on the back of their leg, causing them extreme, agonizing pain. Brilliant game. Would recommend if you've never played it. But this is the analogy we want to use to describe the cross. Now, the cross is the exact same link of energy that's used when we whip. We talk about punching as whipping for this exact reason. My arm has got to be relaxed, and the motion of the rotation of my body is what is the pull back and the throw of the whip. The actual whipping part is just my arm extending, and as it extends, all joints lock out and my wrist kinks over like this. This is the whipping part. This is me pulling it back and throwing it. And this is the actual crack, the snap of the whip at the end. Now, the bit that does damage when you whip someone with a tea towel is the bit at the end where it spins. It all follows one motion, right? It comes back and forth like that. As it comes back, the very end of it is what's like doing the whipping part. And I want you to think about that as your knuckle as it turns over. That is the whipping. That's the bit that does the damage. It's all in the end of the punch. Turning that knuckle over means that you'll land on the knuckle, which means that there'll be less surface area through all of the force of your punch to go through. And we know that pressure equals force divided by surface area. So then, we're doing some fucking physics. So the pressure is what gets you the knockout. The higher pressure, the less surface area, the more force, the more power in your punch. This extending of the arm or whipping of the towel can be further broken down by another analogy, which is like, you know them guys who dance, you know, dancers, they do like that weird move where they go like this. I don't know, they do something like that. Was that actually good?
Yeah, good.
That was the most sarcastic.
That style of dance is called pop and lock.
Pop and lock. We've got the guy here. Right, so you know when they do this, that is like the exact motion of this. I mean, it isn't, but it's the same kinetic energy chain. So I think thinking about that, you see how my hand like whips at the end. That is what your knuckle's doing at the end. Like that. See, the chain goes down the arm like that and comes out at the end. All the force that you generated with your shoulder, with that slight movement, gets rippled into the end of my finger. Same as the punch. All the force that's generated with my hips comes through the shoulder, comes down the arm, and goes into the knuckle, and comes in right at the end. So we've talked about straight shots, but what about hooks? When we're throwing hooks, we want to imagine someone doing a hammer throw, right? They're spinning it around like this, and all the way. Okay, I don't have good hammer throw technique. I have no experience in hammer throw, but think about how all of the weight in that hammer is at the end, and they're pulling back to get it to rotate. They're like leaning back against it. This is exactly what you're doing when you have the weight on the back foot, because you're like pulling it round. And the more you pull it round, the faster it has to travel, because the longer distance from your back foot to the end of your knuckle. So it has to move faster like this. Now, when I've taught like the left hook, we start off with our arm completely relaxed like this, and we just use the rotation of our hips to make it move around like that. Now, it looks kind of stupid, but that's because I've got my arm completely relaxed, and I'm not, positioning it here, drawing the C yet, as we'll get onto in a sec. So we're just using that motion. Think about the hammer throw. My weight's back, and the speed of my knuckle is what's going to do the damage. Then we move on to having it here. And then we bring our guard up and we draw a C shape, and rotate our body. And that's what's going to do the damage. That motion of the hand coming round is exactly the same as that hammer throw being spun round as fast as possible, or the person throwing, do you call it a hammer throw? Throwing the hammer is like leaning back because they're trying to pull it round quicker. And now for the strategy that will allow all these analogies to work is keeping your feet planted whilst you're throwing the punches. We talked about the kinetic chain. The kinetic chain through your body starts at your feet, and if they're not solid and planted in the ground, then you have no energy and force to transfer up your legs, through your hips, and into whatever punch it is you're throwing. So you got to make sure that your feet are always planted. A good tip for this when you're throwing a left hook or left uppercut or lead hook to the body is generally people will dip their knee in like this. This is something you want to try and avoid, because as you dip your knee in, you lose that grip and how your foot is planted into the ground, because you're rolling onto the side of your foot. You want to keep that foot fully planted in the ground, and by not dipping that knee in, it allows you to do this. It's the same with the back foot. You keep the back foot planted in the ground, slight lift in the heel, and you use the grip you have in your back foot to generate the power, to initiate the rotation of your hips, and therefore let the punch come out at a lot quicker pace and with a lot more power. So make sure you plant your feet. Also, join the free school community, unless you're just join it.
You kind of need to explain why.
Hello, I'm Ollie's editor, and he was supposed to tell you why you needed to join the free school community, but since he didn't, I'm stuck with that job. So here it is, www.school.com/HWT. We have courses in here on how to box, the fundamentals, the strategy of boxing, the tactics of boxing. There's 1.2 thousand people in here, all trying to learn boxing as well. And if you're serious, join. See you inside.